Hello everyone, welcome to panel session. This session will be titled, What are the key elements required in a city to make it attractive for high-tech startups? I'm Yuka Tanimoto, Executive Director and Managing Editor of Forbes Japan Web Editorial Team. I will be the moderator of this session. The COVID-19 pandemic has settled down and the city is now newly revitalized. In addition, last year Prime Minister Kishida declared 2022 the first year of startup creation. In such a situation, it is very honored to be here and then discussion with such a great guest who lead a world startup ecosystem. So now let me introduce the audience to our wonderful, wonderful guest. Mr. Andrew Kimball, President and CEO at New York City Economic Development Corporation, and Mr. Ken Shigematsu, President at LaGuardia Law Architect, founder at Inspiring Dots. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
So before starting the discussion, I'd like each of our guests to introduce themselves, including an introduction of their business and what they have been working on. So I'd be happy if you could take, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes for each. So Andrew-san, you go first, please.
Thank you, Yuka. It's great being here with you and all of you in the audience. Really exciting to be in Japan and be on the stage with Ken, who I've gotten to know a little bit back in New York. Just first who I am, President and CEO of the city's Economic Development Corporation. But to give a little flavor for what informs my vision around ecosystem building and economic development in New York City, it's really been driven by my experience over the last 20 years redeveloping 2 massive properties along the Brooklyn waterfront. First, the Brooklyn Navy Yard, about 300 plus acres, 45 buildings, 4.5 million square feet of space, taking what was really a wasteland along the waterfront, reinventing it as a place for the 21st century, a hub for art, design, fashion, high tech, advanced manufacturing, and maker sectors of all kinds. Big success story now for New York City and really a national model for urban adaptive reuse. And then over the last 10 years at Industry City, another massive property on the Brooklyn waterfront, 6 million square feet of space. That when we got there, had only 1,900 jobs. We invested $450 million in the time I was there, creating 9,000 jobs. So that really informed my thinking going forward. This just gives a couple of images of before and after. On the left, you see an old 1800s era industrial building, one of the 45 buildings in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. During my time there, we converted it into the new lab, one of the foremost accelerators and incubators around green tech and climate tech in the city. Really an example of creating the kind of ecosystem to drive tech in the Navy Yard and more broadly. At the Navy Yard, we had 16 buildings. We had 5 of these old courtyards, and you see one of them on the left when we got there. Some of the windows that had to be replaced, some of the 15,000 windows that had to be replaced. And on the right-hand side, you see the spectacular new courtyard with greenery, a place that really draws community at the base of the buildings and incorporates a lot of the maker culture, particularly around food. And one of my most exciting tenants there, one of our most successful, is Japan Village, which draws people from all over the country in the metro area. So I was lucky enough to be asked by Mayor Eric Adams about 6 months ago to start running the city's Economic Development Corporation. We really have 4 major pillars for what we do there. First is strengthening business confidence. Coming out of COVID, how do we not just get New York City back to where we were pre-COVID, but take it to a whole new level, really driving innovation sectors and creating more equity and inclusion within them. Part of that is attracting international business, national business. So I'm really proud that this is actually my first major international trip. It speaks to the importance of Japan as one of our key partners in developing innovation ecosystems across the world. In terms of the sectors we focus on, green tech, clean tech, we're going to talk more about that, biotech, more tech-adjacent sectors, cyber, AI, machine learning, advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, and then film and television and digital media. We build neighborhoods across the city, and we're looking now at transforming Midtown and downtown to make them more 24/7 live, work, play, with more residential, more green space. And we're building commercial and residential nodes across the city in every borough. And then finally, we develop sustainable infrastructure. We've got $9 billion of capital program going across the city, a lot of it in resiliency. Just a few numbers very quickly. We manage 64 million square feet on behalf of the city. That's the equivalent of 13 Maury buildings stacked on top of each other, just to give you a sense of scale. 60,000 people work at our buildings, over 250 million involved in ecosystem building through incubators, accelerators to create a more diverse set of entrepreneurs across New York. The $9 billion capital budget I mentioned, 40% of that, importantly, going to women and minority contractors, again, to create more equity, generating close to $700 million of economic impact. I showed you a slide earlier of the 2 sites I worked on. This just shows the many hundreds of projects we have going on across all 5 boroughs, so many of them about bringing the waterfront back to life, and I know we'll talk more about this. This just shows the explosive growth of 2 of the key sectors for us, biotech and tech, alongside what's happening in Tokyo and Japan more broadly. The growth of tech is just critical to our current success and our future success. And speaking of future success, we see real opportunity around climate tech investment with the opportunity to really grow an industry from about $2 billion to $18 billion a year, and the workforce really increasing more than 10 times in the coming years. This just gives a couple of images, and then I'll turn it over to Ken. On the upper left-hand side is the Brooklyn Army Terminal, one of the many properties that we manage across the city that we're in the process of converting into another tech incubator and hub for advanced manufacturing. On the upper right is one of our accelerators focusing on diverse entrepreneurship in the sectors that we're in. In terms of infrastructure, one of the key sectors for us is offshore wind. We're investing close to $200 million in that sector right now. It'll create 10,000 jobs in the coming years. In the lower right, one of the keys to success at all the sites I've been at, the Navy Yard, Industry City, and now at EDC, is incorporating academia into commerce. And this is the Cornell Tech Building. We're in the process of doing something very similar on the east side of Manhattan around biotech, and I'll be happy to talk more about that as we get into the discussion.
Thank you very much for really wonderful project. Thank you so much. So next, Shigematsu-san, sir, if you please.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, to be here in your very busy time. I'll try my best to make it as a meaningful time for you, everybody. I'm Ken Shigematsu. I'm a principal at the Lagarde Architects and also a founder of Inspiring Dots, which is the community involving all the diverse backgrounds. And I'm really honored to be here with Yuka-san and Andrew. A lot of people ask me why you're in New York, you like New York. And the reason why I like New York is because of the diversity and all those energy to change things to be better. And Andrew is the one driving everybody to that direction. So I'm really honored to be here talking with you. So just briefly talk about my backgrounds, what we do. We're an architect, a master planner, but not only designing the building, but we more focus on creating the environment, and we call it a place for creativity. How you can create the big city involving all those creative people. And the place we're emphasizing is the center of expressions. If everybody can be honest with your curiosity and just focus on that and the place to express that in front of everybody, if that becomes natural to all the lifestyle, everybody, I think that city will be really successful and interesting for everybody and inspiring. And to make that happen, we have 4 keywords. First one is a critical mass. Because of this technology, people can work suburb wherever you want remotely. But I'm still a city believer. And I think to have a big innovation, creative things that are going on, I think critical mass is the key. So the city with all those creative people together in like a neighborhood scale, I think that's one of the key elements. And to involve more diversity, a lot of people from different backgrounds is another key. And once you get the idea, you need to have a place to experiment. So we cannot be afraid of experimenting things, wait for all the regulation to be clear to do something. I think we have to be more generous to experiment a lot of new things and learn from that and make it happen. And to make it work as an urban context, I think integration with the public space is the key. So our theme is always that how we can merge the private property and the public realm together to integrate everything. So this is one of the projects that we recently finished in Shenzhen, China. And as you can see, we designed the entire waterfront park together with the retail, office, residential, and the hotel. And we just intentionally merged the border. So you cannot even see where's the public realm and where's the private project is. And by doing this, now if you ask people to work here or live here, do the shopping, I don't think you can attract that many people. But if you merge with the public realm, the strengths of the public realm that you can involve a lot more diverse people, not only the tourism or doing the well-beings, but also all the creative people. I think we're going to discuss it more in the detail, but this kind of like an environment is more the creative people is looking for and get more inspiration instead of just go to the big office tower and go through the securities and isolate from everything else. And obviously good for the environment as well. We need to think about the sustainability. So that's another key element. And one more thing I would like to emphasize is that how to bring the local community to the projects. And like Andrew is doing always in this industry cities, like how to bring the local community as part of this new creative field is another important key element. So recreating this atmosphere, all the local community can get together and naturally meet those like new visitors. And there's a concert venues. So that's the way we think of the urban plannings. This is another example. We always try to bring the public space in the center of those mixed-use projects. One of the examples in Japan is this Granberry Park in Minami Machida. This is also integrate the local community park as part of this TOD, transportation-oriented developments.
Okay, thank you so much. What a beautiful job you have done. So based on your presentation, so now let's move on to the discussion part. We have prepared 3 topics for the discussion. So number 1, the city design for the high-tech startups. So what is needed for the city to attract startups? And then number 2, then how Tokyo can learn, and then why can we learn here Tokyo from the example of a startup city from all over the world. And then number 3, collaboration of a regulatory body and private sectors. So when we consider city tech and also the city forming, we have so many stakeholders. So how do we communicate with other stakeholders then to be a success? So we will hear in depth about these 3 topics. Let's begin by asking the panelists about the first topic. So city design for the high-tech startups. So I'd like to know from the perspective of a professional, has seen many examples all over the world. So I would like to ask you directly, so what is needed for the city to attract for especially the startups? So what do you think? What is needed? Andrew-san, what do you think?
Thank you. First is creating, it's really all about creating the environment in which young creatives want to invest and grow a company and ultimately live and raise a family, maybe. And for us in New York, a lot of that has been recapturing the waterfront. For 40, 50 years, we turned our back on the waterfront in New York. The last 20, we have re-engaged with that, and that's been a big part of my success at the Navy Yard and Industry City, and a lot of the projects that EDC is doing now are very waterfront connected. We run the ferry service throughout the city. So that's 1. 2, you want buildings and ecosystems, and Ken was talking a little bit about this, in which young people want to set up a company. And that means being around like-minded creatives. For the historic buildings that I worked in, it was really being part of a new movement for 21st century industrial revolution, taking buildings with old, great bones and adaptively reusing them for the future. Very, very sustainable in terms of adaptively reusing buildings. In terms of modern buildings, those that are doing the most successfully in New York are the most sustainable. They have interesting design, they've incorporated elements of the circular economy, they've incorporated elements of climate change into them with rooftop gardens or solar. That's where young people want to work today.
Okay, so how about you, Ken-san?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with it. And I think one of the important things Andrew just mentioned is that, and something I feel is a little bit missing in Tokyo is a living part. And center of Tokyo, now that the population is growing, they're saying, but everybody lives along the river, but it's kind of like isolated from the main activities. But New York, like even Manhattan, I think 60% of the floor is residential. So people actually live in the middle of the city that things are happening. But a lot of a place in Tokyo is just like after 5 o'clock, it just, nobody lives there. So it's really hard to create this community. And I think that is something Tokyo can improve to involve more people and create this like a creative field. And in terms of the waterfront, maybe we can go to the next slide. Actually, was part of the next topic. But I think one of the wasting opportunity in Tokyo is that, I mean, don't get it wrong. I live in the U.S. for probably 17 years. But always just my focus is how to improve Tokyo. And I love Tokyo. I feel so much potential. So that's why I try to be inspirational today. And this waterfront channel, I mean, this is just some of the projects we put together and see how much development is happening. And I mean, finally, now we focus more on the riverfronts. But still, as a waterfront transportation, the Tokyo is still lacking. And there's a lot of tourism topics, and there's some like experiment happening from part of the Tokyo to one stations, and how does it work as a commute. But I think we should create like a big network, and Andrew can talk more, but I live right in front of the ferry terminal, which is called Hunters Point South. And I'm the one just appreciating this waterfront transportation. I can take the ferry to go to work, or if I want to go to those like a Brooklyn Navy Yards and all the things that I want to get inspired, I just take a ferry to go there. I think that kind of lifestyle is something more free for those creative people than just taking a subway and go through the security to go to the nice high-end skyscrapers. So I think that kind of using the existing public realm and how to convert that to stimulate all those creative people is one of the key I think we should do.
Okay. So as you mentioned, the river or the waterfront side, but also I have heard it is said that the good city has a good, well-designed public space, right? Then so maybe like a park or the library maybe. But so as you know, compared to other cities, so in Tokyo, so there is the very, very huge enough space for the making a park or the other, the library too. So how should we do so for the really small and in no space for the public space? So what do you think? So any idea for the Tokyo?
Well, I'll start. I think Ken's right. I mean, the waterfront is a tremendous opportunity. People want to be close to it. If you can get them easy transportation access, particularly by water, and that's been a key part of New York's strategy over the last 10 years, is to get people back down to the water. Our ferry service runs about 75 miles throughout New York Harbor, 16 stops. It's become a new, really critical mode to get people to work, but also to get people to parks elsewhere or the beach, or to meet the demand for a tourist experience. So it's been critical. I would say green space elsewhere, though, throughout the city has been incredibly important. In Manhattan, the High Line has been one of the greatest new parks anywhere in the world and a tremendous success. But we're at a key moment now in New York, and I think in a lot of cities where having very dense business-only districts is a thing of the past. We are starting to move away from that in Midtown and downtown and converting some number of space to residential to create more of a 24/7 experience, both work and live. That will help the local small businesses. And at the same time, we're looking at, from a public realm perspective, how do we create more green space? How do we close parts of Broadway? How do we widen the sidewalks on Fifth Avenue? How do we make green space on both sides of Grand Central Terminal? All of those are projects that are in process right now and will make the dense urban core even more livable.
So could you tell me about the how we use the waterfront, especially for the Tokyo? So you have some slide for that, right?
Real quick. The next slide is one of the key waterfront we're helping. This is a Yaesu, but right next to it there's a Nihonbashi, and there's a highway right now, and the government decided to put it underground, under the river, and it's going to revitalize the entire districts. And I'm also helping like all 5 parcels together to create like a nice waterfront city environment. But I think we should have more engagement with the water. Right now, it's just like there's a limited point that you can access the water. So if you have more like a ferry terminal, not only for the tourists, but also for the regular lifestyle, that'll be changing the entire district. And to answer your question, you're talking to a person coming from New York. I mean, there's so much limited area. It's the same as Tokyo. But there's always the place that you can change it to the attractive public realm. And just it depends on how you see things. And the road there, you think it's just like a space for the car to go through. But like if you look at the Times Square, they completely change it to the people and become like a really attractive public spaces. The waterfront as well, it was just like the place to all the sewage to go through. But if you think that your perspective in a different way, it's immediately become a really attractive public realms. And one of the examples this morning I was talking with Andrew is that the KK lines is going to be a park in the next 5-10 years. I think that's another like a great opportunity to change the entire city. It's just like a highway, and everybody think, okay, that's a highway for car. But we need to keep thinking. We need to change our mind, change our perspective to see more opportunity. Then immediately, I think there's tons of potential in Tokyo as well.
Yeah, I agree. The KK Park could be one of the most exciting things that I've heard about in the last couple of days here. And I think you will see transformation all along that roadway once that project is done. And, we have to make sure that young people want to keep coming to cities to innovate and create. And part of that is creating a quality of life. And so much of that relates to public realm. And just to highlight one other example, really the challenge of our lifetimes is to deal with climate change, and particularly sea level change. And one of the exciting projects we're working on is around the tip of Lower Manhattan. About 45% of all of our jobs in the city are in Manhattan. We've got to protect our financial district. If we do nothing, portions of that will be underwater in 50 years. So we are now designing what will essentially be an 8-acre park along the financial district in Lower Manhattan with a series of storm surge barriers covered by marshland with walkways through it. That will create, it'll be very, very expensive, probably $8 to $10 billion, but it will be far more cost effective than doing nothing. That could cost us $25 to $50 billion. And just creating a park like that and new marshland will generate all sorts of upland opportunities for further development in housing and commercial space.
So Andrew-san, so when you develop the city, so you have to consider about the hard side, like a building, making a building or a park or other, the like a sidewalk or something like that. And also, so you have to consider about the soft aspect, like people or what kind of business in it. So so you have to consider the both sides. So which is more difficult to do things, or
you're speaking really to the challenge of getting big things done in an urban area and how you work with community appropriately. And I think Ken really nailed it on the head a minute ago when he said, the most successful projects are those that are integrated with the surrounding communities. You want to create places that people will come to from all over the city, but if you're not talking to your neighbors and integrating them with that vision, having them have a say, having them hopefully be able to not just come and enjoy a park, but maybe be able to walk to work from where they live, or ride on a greenway. One of the great improvements in New York in recent years has been the bike and pedestrian greenway network throughout the city. A huge, huge improvement. Things are shifting in New York. It's cyclical in terms of how neighborhoods feel about growth. And there's a saying, NIMBY, not in my backyard. That's being converted to YIMBY now. Yes, in my backyard. Yes, I want growth. Yes, I want opportunities for my children. Yes, I want jobs locally. Yes, I want green space. And you see a shift happening that's very, very important and really is led by the Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Hochul now, who are really collaborating on this growth strategy, building more housing, modernizing our urban areas, creating more equity and opportunity for people locally.
Okay. So actually, let's move on to this part and how Tokyo can land. Now I will ask you to understand. So if you are the leader of the City Tech Tokyo, and then you have to do something, the project that for attracting the startups, then what would you do for the first, or is there any idea for?
I think a lot of the things we've been touching on. I think recapturing the waterfront, bringing people to the waterfront, moving people by water, incorporating more green space into the urban core, projects like KK. The transportation network in the city is extraordinary. Continue to build on that and create density around transit stops, both regional train and local subway. Really critical. I think one of the things that's been done well in Tokyo, from spending all day yesterday walking 15 kilometers around town, is the incorporation of the historic with the new. I think it's also embedding in all of the new buildings a green strategy. Circular economy is something that's very big in New York right now, using construction waste and recycled materials and pouring it back into the construction of the future. Again, for young people who want to start businesses, they want to be in buildings that speak to the future and are resilient and climate friendly. I think all of those are key important aspects. I would also say collaboration with universities, something that I understand is happening with the University of Tokyo a little bit, but has been critical to success in all of the innovation districts in New York City.
Okay, as for universities, so Shigematsu-san has a kind of idea for yes, including the university. This one.
Yes.
Did you talk about that?
Right. So I think for all the startups or innovations, what I heard is that a lot of the patent, like new technologies, is in a university sleeping and waiting for the opportunity. And we have so many great innovations happenings in a university, but unfortunately, those researchers is not good at developing the business around that, and they don't know how to use it. So I think a relationship with this, like a university and like an investor or startups who wants to make a business out of it, and a place to exhibit, to showcase the products, it's an important three elements. And if you can strategize all three networks and how to create those things, nice synergy is one of the key elements, I believe. And this is two examples I was just thinking of. One is Akihabara. It's like a place for all the creative people to gather all those necessary things. But there's the Tokyo University is right there as well. And Ueno is the place, there's a bunch of museums, but we can just kind of use it for not only for the museum, but also for the startups to showcase the product. So I think that kind of triangle, or another one, it could be in the Shibuya. There's all the startups, IT businesses around the station area. But actually, there's Aoyama Gakuin's or another Tokyo University campuses right there. And if you go up to the Yoyogi Park area, there's a lot of opportunity, like NHKs or, I mean, all those like medias and stuff. I think somehow we can collaborate each other and create a nice synergy. I think it's going to be much more interesting, creative city. It will be there. So yeah, one of the projects we're doing in Shibuya is that, maybe I can click this one. This is right above the Miyamasuzaka. It's doing with the Tokyo Tatemono. This is a place that not only the incubation office is there, but it's more like an education. And yeah, Andrew can follow up on this one. I heard that there's a lot more things happening in New York as well, but just bringing people, not just to learn at the school, but also just exchanging information as part of the educations. And this is the place that you can go there from younger students all the way to the grown-ups. And they just go there to learn or exchange ideas and meet up with the people you never meet. And so once you want to get an inspiration, just come here and get some inspiration and create some nice innovations. And the same strategy, I think that kind of environment should be nicely integrated with the public realm so that it's more stronger core to bring people in. So I think that's one of the way to do the startup city.
Yeah, let me just add to that and highlight 3 examples of university and commercial collaboration. One is Cornell Tech. I showed an image earlier on Roosevelt Island, again on the water, now really driving incubation of tech companies, particularly around smart cities in New York City. We actually have a prop tech opportunity to bring companies, startups to any of our campuses around the city so they can test out their product. We're creating a portal for a lot of those companies to access city government procurement opportunities. The second project is on Governor's Island, where we're creating a climate center focused on climate research. And that will be with a number of different universities that will be announced in the months ahead. And obviously also on the water. And then the third, which is also along the FDR Drive on the east side in a neighborhood called Kips Bay. We've taken 5 acres and just announced with the mayor and the governor really an extraordinary project around biotech where we're going to bring 3 public colleges, a 2-year college, really a vocational college around public health, a 4-year college around nursing, and a graduate school around public health and research. We're going to bring a high school that's going to be a magnet for students who want to pursue health tech or biotech careers. We're going to have 2 city agencies focused on public health that could be job pathways for those students, and then build 1 million square feet of private lab space where those students can have internships, where the entrepreneurs that are running those companies can come and guest lecture, all on a 5-acre campus where you create the ecosystem that will really inspire the innovators of the future.
Okay. Yes, so we got a very useful hints for making the Tokyo is really startup city. But so when I think about if we want the Tokyo to be a global startup ecosystem, I mean to be a startup hub, so what should we do? You know, is there any different approach to be just a startup hub or the global startup hub? What is different? And then how do you do and how do we do to be a global startup hub in Tokyo? What do you think?
Well, one way I think is you create a platform for those companies to get started. You provide them with technical assistance. You provide them with career pathway opportunities for their workers. You connect them to universities. But then you also support their expansion abroad. And I think the notion of Japanese startups, Tokyo-based or elsewhere in Japan, expanding elsewhere, we'd love them to come to New York City, or New York City startups expanding to Japan, really is one way that we can work together to build that ecosystem. So a lot of my meetings this week, I met earlier today with the Smart City Institute here. I'm meeting with some biotech companies. There are real opportunities for that kind of partnership.
So what do you think?
No, I totally agree, and I always say that sometimes people say how can we grow the Japanese startups to compete in the global market? But I think attracting the global startups to Tokyo is much more interesting and much more stronger. So not only just focus on the Japanese startups, how we can bring a startup from New York or every other cities and doing a partnership, as Andrew mentions, and create the district that attract all those international startups. And what is the key point for that is something we need to think of instead of focusing on Japanese startups to how to go to the overseas.
Okay. Okay, let's go to the last topic in collaboration of a regulatory body and the private sector. So when I think about Japan, especially compared to the New York City, so we are I think there is a lack of flexibility. So we can do anything try to do something, and then just stop if it doesn't work. So in flexible cities, so how can we communicate, or how can you convince to the a regulatory body or collaborate with the government? Or I think so. You have a lot of experience to how you convince to those
So
people.
go to the next topic.
Please. Okay, sure.
Okay.
This one.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is just one of the example. I pick agricultures, and this is one of the projects we did in China again. But one of the issue in China, and I think a lot of different country as well, that all the urban city is suck up all the economies and peoples, and just all the suburbs got left over. And this is focusing on the peasant. And agriculture should be the fundamental business for anybody, any human beings. But somehow the business is not working well. I think there's something wrong with there. And this is the project that we created out of the story of the swimmy. So all those red small fishes, it's hard to compete with a global market or big cities. But if you implement some of a huge hub to that community, then you can form this big fish. And the black eye swimmy can be the eye for the big fish, and you can start compete with the big cities or the global markets. So the key to this project was that how we can make it flexible, like Yuka-san, you mentioned. We just try to create the platforms. And like iPhone softwares, you can plug in the new programs and just replace it with the different ones. It's by experiment. And I think one of the key elements I mentioned earlier is that the experiment mindset in the field is something you need for the startup city. So this is the place that you can just plug in all these different programs and just keep investigating what's the best solutions. So in the beginning here, we just bring the tourists as a winery vacations, ecotourisms, but together with the university, again, I think all this research, how to bring the innovation to the agriculture field is important, and also create the local community hubs so that all those three synergies come together is gonna solve a lot of social issues and together with the business model.
Okay. So Anderson, could you tell us, is there any way or tips to involve all stakeholders, especially like a regulatory body?
Yeah, I think on the regulatory front, I'll mention two others. I love urban agriculture, aquaculture. I think there's a real opportunity in that sector in urban areas. But let me talk about two other examples that are very top of mind in terms of driving innovation in New York. One is very simple, EV charging for your cars and battery storage. Two things that we don't have enough of either, yet everybody's converting to electric vehicles. And on the battery storage side, the rules around that, the technology around that. Our fire department is very concerned about batteries that catch on fire, and that's happening with a lot of bike batteries. They're concerned about battery storage on or near buildings. We've got to figure out that from a regulatory standpoint. The other thing I would just mention, and I think this is probably true in Japan as well, we are moving very fast in New York and the East Coast to getting off of fossil fuels. The offshore wind industry is exploding off the East Coast. Hydro, in wind and solar upstate, up towards Canada, is exploding. Transmission lines are coming into New York City from the north and from the south. The problem is when you get to the city, how do you distribute the power? And all of our grids in urban areas, and I suspect Tokyo is no exception, are old. They need to be updated, they need to be modernized, there needs to be an innovation around that. But there isn't the focus today, and there are regulatory hurdles to getting that done that I think is one of the key things both New York and Tokyo need to think about going forward.
Okay. And Shigematsu-san, so you have a very, very nice project about the Tokyo G line. So you mentioned a little bit about the KK. Then, so you have been saying more than 10 years, I think, about the Tokyo G line, right? So how do you convince, and how will you convince, or how will you involve all stakeholders to complete this project for the future? So is there any idea for that?
I mean, it's really not easy process, and it just takes time. But yeah, I mean, to clarify that, KKG line is like one of the activity we've been doing. But the main Tokyo G line idea I've been saying for 15 years is that the C1, the Toshin Kanjo-sen, 14.7 kilometer, that everything, I think it's not necessary for the future. I mean, after the autopilots or, like a sharing business, I think instead of investigating how to make that work for the vehicles, I think we should just decide and open up to the entire people. Maybe half can be park and open up for people's lifestyle, but the other half could be like a future mobility innovation experimental field, so that everybody can get to experience like a latest vehicles, and they can learn all the data out of it. I think if that happens in the center of Tokyo, I think the Tokyo will be a completely different city. So I think that'd be great to have that. My approach is that I'm just keep talking, and my profession is just obviously doing those visual things and just excite people. And do you want to live this kind of city, or just want to keep the highway? And just slowly involve more people. And I just forgot to mention about this one slide real quick, that the agriculture things doesn't have to be in the suburb. I think even in the center of the city, by using this like a vertical farm technologies, I think we don't have to waste all the energy bringing all the foods from the suburb, bringing into the city. I think that's a lot of wasting energy already. So by doing this like a vertical farm tower in each district, and that place not only for the food supplies, but also can be a community hub for the kids and adults, and all the innovation could happen there. And people want to live around here. Startups want to have all the experiment happening in this building. So yeah, I think my role is just keep showing some exciting visions in an image, and try to involve more people. That's my approach.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have just 2 minutes left. So anything you missed to say, or anything you would like to say about our topic, and also please give us some advice for the people who are trying to make the Tokyo city for attracting the city. So Andrew-san, please.
Yeah, I think continuing what seems to be happening here, which is a robust engagement between the corporate sector and government, and the startup sector and government. And what you need, and I think we see in New York, and one other exciting statistic I'll just mention, is in the last 12 months in New York, 1 in 9 of all the companies started in New York. That just speaks to, New York is known as a corporate headquarters for a lot of companies globally, but really what's driving the economy is the small businesses, and so many of those are startups in the tech or green tech or biotech space. So I would leave that as my last words of advice.
Thank you very much, Ken-san.
Yeah, so I think if I talk to the startup company owner, they say like how you get the idea to be a startups. I think most of the people is because a lot of people around him is doing the startups as well. So I think if you create the district, I mean, I said like the critical mass. I mean, if you create this critical mass that everybody is free, honest to their curiosity and keep challenging, I think that kind of community, if we can create it wherever, I mean, you can start with the one district and one by one, that'd be great. I think it will start changing the city.
Thank you very much. I hope that you will take away some of today's tips and take action to make Tokyo and other parts of Japan more attractive, not only for startups, but also to many other people. So again, thank you very much, Andrew-san and Ken-san. Please give a big round of applause to them. Thank you very much. Thank you.